Why is the establishment so scared of Donald Trump? Because they know he's a maverick. They know he operates on his own. They know that he's gone up against the establishment and not let them basically squeeze him in business deals. They know that he understands we've got a lot of one-sided trade deals with China and other nations. And you've got this political class of insiders that don't want us to actually have a president that represents us. They're globalist. And Trump isn't, quote, getting his information from Alex Jones. Trump was there during the primaries when he was winning states by 78% like California, and they were announcing that they were going to take all the delegates from him. Or in Colorado, they just suspended the election. In other states, like Louisiana, he would win, and they would give the delegates to Ted Cruz. Then the media spun it like he was being a sore loser because despite the fact he was winning the popular vote, the Republican Party was saying no. Trump stood up to that. The RNC was forced to back down, and the voters' will and the law was followed, not the Republican rules. And so Trump, again, doesn't care if the mainstream media criticizes him and laughs at him and makes fun of him. He's coming out and saying, we have a lot of evidence of retail voter fraud and preparations for election fraud. And Trump has been talking about California and Illinois and others that have had bills that have even gotten to the governor's desk to let illegals who've been off the plane one day vote. But then they look at Trump and go, oh, we're not involved in any election fraud or retail fraud. We're not going out and getting illegals registered to vote, even though Project Veritas and others are able to do it all the time on video. Our investigative journalists have documented how easy it is, even in a state like Texas that has more controls. So the Democratic Party is over here trying to legalize illegals voting. And there's evidence of it all over the country going on in past elections, or dead people voting, or Democratic operatives voting multiple times. But they want to tell you that's not going on, even though it's admitted that Kennedy, back in 1960, stole Illinois. Now, I'm going to get into some of the history of election fraud and also voter fraud here in a moment and talk about how the Democrats and the media are ridiculous, claiming they don't know what it is when it's historic. And anybody with an IQ above 70 knows about it. But first, I want to give you the good news. Trump has heard our call. He's heard your call. He knows the history of fraud. He knows how they tried to steal the primaries from him. And they did steal it from Bernie Sanders, unfortunately. So Donald Trump is announcing on his official website an area for people to organize and get ready to be poll watchers and to also be exit pollers to document who's actually voting for who. Because here's the big secret. Donald Trump is doing his own internal polling with some of the top bipartisan pollers in the country. He wants real polls, not spin polls where Reuters samples 15% more Democrats to claim Hillary's 15 points ahead. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's all sorts of fraud. They're gaming Google. They're not listing him as a presidential candidate. They're trying to rig the debates. I mean, we've seen the incredible scams, and Trump's not going along with it. He is upfront calling it out, calling for local law enforcement to watch for it, calling for poll watchers to watch, and calling for exit polls, which have historically been 3 to 5% margin of error, which is incredibly accurate. So he's announcing, hey, I've got my own internal polling showing I'm ahead in Ohio by 7 points, showing I'm ahead in Pennsylvania by about 10 points, showing I'm ahead in Florida in some internal polls by 15. And these are real random polls. Showing in some polls Trump is 3 points ahead in California. Margin of error, dead heat. Instead, the Democrats are so arrogant, they're claiming with their fake polls, he's going to lose Georgia. He's going to lose Texas. He's going to lose Utah. Ladies and gentlemen, internal polls, not just by the Trump campaign, but by other major institutions, show Trump on average 7 points ahead in basically California strongholds for the Democrats. New York, that's why they are crapping their pants. If Trump was so far behind in all these so-called polls, when just 2 weeks ago he was 10 points ahead before they changed the methodology, why would they be panicking and saying he's dropping out and saying his wife's a prostitute and saying she's an illegal alien and all this crap they've made up? They're doing it because they're panicking, because it's hard to steal a landslide election. And they know Trump is aware of the fact that the AP and 5 other media outlets called California for Sanders a day before the election even had. And it's this shadowy voter pool organization that will nationally try to put out the fake numbers coming up on November 8th. This is an incredible time to be alive because Donald Trump isn't one of these mummies like John McCain or Mitt Romney that's going to sit there and take a stolen election. In fact, it was in 2012 that Trump came out and said, there's no way, I've talked to my political experts, that Mitt Romney lost this. McCain was hated in 2008. Obama was the Messiah, was probably elected by even bigger numbers than we saw. A lot of evidence there was some cheating against him. 4 years later, Obama in 2012 was very unpopular. There were 8 million more voters in 2012 than there were in 2008. But Mitt Romney got less votes than John McCain did. And guess what Donald Trump called? He called BS. Bravo Sierra. Because that's what it is. They admit the stock market's rigged now. They admit that the interest rates are rigged. They admit the currency rates are rigged. They admit all this stuff's rigged by insiders now. And these globalists are stealing elections all over the world. In some areas, Goldman Sachs is putting its corporate executives in Italy and in places like Greece without even having an election and going, it's okay, we install leaders now. And then here comes Donald Trump saying, excuse me, we've been doing our own polling and we're way ahead in all these states. And so if there's hanky-panky, something went on here. But I don't just believe Donald Trump. I've gone and looked at the methodology, you should too, of all these polls you see. Sometimes you had to go 5-6 pages back clicking to find their so-called methodology. And you're going to see the frauds they're engaged in. They're calling old phone numbers of known Democratic voters. They're calling independents in the vote independents when they're really Democrats. They're sampling 10 to 15 points more of Democrats in the overall poll to skew it. This is so obvious. They think we're stupid, but here's the good news. We're not. Good liberals, real liberals like Julian Assange, who actually have the hacked emails, document that they stole the election from Sanders and are planning it for Trump. And more is about to come out. The truth is, the whole world sees the evil that's grown here in the U.S. And as bad as the Republican Party is, that's allied with the Democrats, the world sees that it's the Democratic Party that's really running the corrupt combine that's hijacked this nation. And the world, not just Americans, are standing up and speaking out. My final statement is this. Donald Trump has had the courage to tell the truth. The courage to not let them steal the Republican nomination from him and the American people. And now he sees evidence of fraud in these national polls compared to scientific polls that he and others are having conducted. And he's saying we need to watch this and that he needs us in battleground states, there's 10 of them at least, arguably 12, to be involved and to organize with the Trump campaign to legally and lawfully, at a proper distance, conduct exit polls so that we can actually document what's happening. And don't forget, we've got the Democrats trying to legalize illegals voting and trying to pass laws where there's no ID. Most states don't make you have an ID so they can engage in this fraud. Trump is absolutely right that we should always be vigilant about our elections. We should always be vigilant about our government. Our founders told us over and over again that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And anyone that tells us not to be vigilant needs to be looked at very, very closely. I'm Alex Jones signing off for Infowars.com. If you're watching or listening to this transmission, you are the resistance. You are the patriots. You are the answer. No matter what race, color, creed, or religion you are, you bleed red blood, and you love freedom, and you love justice. And Donald Trump is our general. We are modern Paul Revere's, and it's time to get out there and be involved. I intend to be a poll watcher myself, and I intend to be out there doing exit polls. My patriotic duty.